All right. Everyone, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Rotaract and I will be your moderator for the day. And this is none other than the place to be to learn about cybersecurity and the cyberspace. This is Project Encrypted. So before we dive right into our little project and our little discussion about what cybersecurity is and how you can stay safe, let me introduce about what Encrypted is all about. So I think all of us have got social media on our phones and on our devices and everything. That's how we stay connected. That's how we talk to our loved ones, our family. That's how we communicate with our work and professional lives as well. With that being said, we have usually had the knack of forgetting our passwords, right? So I think we've witnessed this as well, where we have forgotten our passwords, we've tried to recover it, and then suddenly we witness someone else using our accounts for their own purposes, right? So it is something that is truly heinous, and it's something that's kind of detrimental to our personal lives and our professional lives as well. With that being said, guys, given the fact that we live in the 21st century where most of our work is being done online using the digital platforms, I think we should be able to protect ourselves and be prepared for what's out there, for all these digital crimes and whatnot. And again, I apologize if you hear any background noise. I apologize for that. But with that being said, I would like to invite Road Tractor Ayman Amir to introduce our guest speaker for the day. So, Ayman, all yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to introduce our guest speaker for today, Mr. Vaidulankara, who is a prominent personality in the sphere of cybersecurity with over a decade of experience in progressive technology and digital strategy. Garnering extensive qualifications in both legal and technical arenas, he is a pioneer in the information security marketplace. Over to you, Mr. Vaidulankara.
Thank you, Ayman. That's a very kind introduction by you. Welcome, everybody. And again, thank you, Lehan, as well, for that excellent introduction and a sort of a segue into what we are going to talk about in terms of cybersecurity. More than cybersecurity, because cybersecurity as a discipline has a wide variety of areas. It's very vast, and I don't think we can cover it in 1 hour. But I will talk about certain aspects that impact everyone, especially young individuals like yourselves. What happens is, regardless of what you do, you interact a lot online. And because of our interactions online, sort of exposes us inadvertently to many risks and threats out there. And that's something I just want to talk about today. Some of the threats out there, some of the things and the understandings that we're going to get, just to be aware and hopefully be a little safe and to mitigate some of the risks when you are engaging in some of these online and digital activities. So if you permit me to just share my screen, I trust my screen is visible to everyone.
It is, Mr. Asela. It's
Excellent.
visible.
So, Lehan, I just wanted to start off where I think you left off. When we talk about why online safety. And when we talk about why, before we get to the why, I think it's important to understand the what. And I think when I generally conduct these seminars, what I would generally go around the room asking is, what do you do online? And I get a varied, and trust me, I've done this too, from adults, executives in companies, to very recently a bunch of 11-year-olds. And I got very interesting answers. But mostly the theme, especially in terms of guys who are still doing, people who are doing academics. I mentioned guys, but I mean everyone. But especially people who are doing academics, they always say, listen, most of our academic activities, we can always thank COVID for that, is now being conducted via online. For various challenges that we've experienced this year as well. Apart from that, we get the general activities. I know there's a lot of gamers out there, so they use online platforms and gaming platforms quite copiously. Then you have the casual entertainment viewers. You have your Netflix, you have your Spotify. Then you have your research. For that, you might use something like a YouTube. You might do Google. I'm told, I'm very old, but I'm told that there are other searches. People sometimes use TikTok now to use search for different things. So this is all very new to me. But certainly it shows the nature of search also is changing. But we understand now that people carry out a variety of activities online. And now when you look at online, the nature of how people interact with the internet and online is quite different to how I used to interact. For example, when I was a teenager, was when the internet came to Sri Lanka. So people are surprised when I say, especially your generation is quite surprised to hear that we predate the internet, especially in this country. When the internet came, and I'm sure you all heard this particular noise that the router used to make. It's called a retro noise now. And that was our world. The internet, connecting to the internet was a completely new exercise, where it took about a good 20 minutes to connect. Speeds weren't that great. And I used to recall we connect to the internet and the landline used to be engaged when you're connecting to the internet. So some of the challenges that we had. And generally a YouTube video, I recall when I used to come from school, I used to put the video to load. I used to have a wash, play, do everything and come back and the video would have been loaded. So that's a good 2 hours. Something that you guys is completely alien to you guys, because I noticed that even a couple of seconds lag right now is met with complete disdain by this generation. But such is and the reason that is, there is a reason for that. You guys are known as digital natives. You are born to the internet, children of the internet. We are its immigrants. We have immigrated to this world. We are first generation or maybe second generation immigrants. Your grandparents are immigrants to the internet world or digital world, whereas you have grown up with it. Especially when I talk to young guys, I did very recently a lecture at Gateway, and these guys were small kids, 11, and they said they got their first digital device when they were about 5 or younger. So you can see that from an early age. And when I talk about my experience with the internet, I'm somewhere in my 16, 17 or 18, closer to that. And when we got high-speed internet, I was closer, to my 20s. So we were quite mature compared to some of the kids that are experiencing online digital platforms today. Now, the point being, all this comes to the fact that this is similar to a key. There are keys being given to you, car keys, and you've been asked to drive, but no one's really told you how to drive. Now, in that example, you can imagine what will happen. You don't have any idea of how to drive a car. You've been given the keys. You have no idea how the road rules work. You don't even know, perhaps, which side of the road you need to drive on. You probably don't know the options and the features in the car itself. Chances are you are going to, well, best case, have a little scratch here and there. Worst case, end up with an injury or injuring someone else in the process. So this is the danger, similar danger that this generation faces. You've been given the most powerful tool in the whole world at your fingertips, which is the internet and which is digital platforms, and basically exposed from a very early age. And the potential of it you are using very well, but certainly some of the dangers, some of the threats and aspects, perhaps not given a better understanding or better awareness of that. And also perhaps not made aware of that and sort of discovering as you go along. The danger of that is sometimes there might be fatal or critical mistakes that you make. So that's why we're here to talk a little about that. And perhaps I can learn something from you. You can maybe take back something that I have to share as well. Now, when you say key threats in cyberspace, I do have another tab loaded to show you guys some of the attacks that are happening right now, but I feel we can take it towards the end of the presentation because I just want to run through this and get into a more interactive session with Lehan. You know, you've heard these terms. You've heard the term
Yes.
virus.
Viruses, hackers, predators, phishing, and all these things. These are terms that we hear every other day, Mr. Sailor.
Exactly.
And I think, as you said, we'll run through this and then we can get into a little conversation and we can engage more.
Exactly.
I'm really interested in knowing what's up next for us. So let's continue.
So very simply, because these are quite exhaustive definition, but a virus is taken from the biological term, a virus. And all of us, I think, have a fair idea how a biological virus works, thanks to COVID. It's the same methodology of how a virus behaves and the way I explain this to my students is something doing something that it's not supposed to, a piece of code doing something it's not supposed to. And that's a very simplistic definition that you can have. And then based on that, there are so many definitions. We call them malware, sometimes we call them ransomware, so many other words that you can use. Secondly, of course, you know, there's hackers and there's predators. I will speak about predators a little bit, but certainly hackers, the media has given them a very bad spin. But in my definition, a hacker is a person who's very creative at problem solving. And I think that's the way you must look at it. But unfortunately, because of that gift, because of the talent, different people use it in different ways. Now, I work with hackers, and what we do is we sit down with organizations and we go through their systems, and we sort of, in a very formal setting, tell them, you know, if you need to fix A, B, and C, because if you don't, the bad guys will come. Of course, the other end of the spectrum is you have the guys you hear about in the media. Very recently, you saw a young man decide to, you know, embarrass Uber, I would like to call it, because Uber is such a large corporation, Fortune 500 company, one of the big dogs in the tech world. And the fact that embarrassed them quite comprehensively speaks to a different type of hacker out there. So again, there are varying profiles of these guys, and I would like to maybe perhaps touch on them as we go along. But like I said, there are people who use that particular problem-solving talent to a malicious purpose or to a sort of vandalistic purpose. And based on that, you see the different definitions of hackers come along. So the really bad guys out there, they're out there to steal your personal information, create a disruption, disrupt networks, disrupt services, digital services like we saw with Uber. Very recently, if anyone you know is based in Australia, second largest telco, Optus, suffered a breach. About 9 million telco records are out there in the dark web right now. So, and obviously, when you say out there in the dark web, it's not out there in the dark web, it's been sold in the dark web. And if you, well, do a rough calculation about it, let's say $10 per record and 9 million records, you can sort of get an estimate of how much these information is being sold. And that's a really interesting pull for anyone to sort of get into this. But unfortunately, it's not something I recommend because it is on a criminalistic element. Now, again, phishing is another definition of that. And phishing, again, simplistic definition, is somebody conning you. Now, you see this in the real world where somebody misrepresents something, you know, gives a fake check or gives a fake invoice or says something or sends you a fake ticket, perhaps. And it's the same thing that happens in the digital world. And I'll give you a few examples if we move on to the next slide. And generally, when I say this, I say, as you see these messages, there is one uncle that comes to your mind right now, or an auntie. Just hold that image right there, because if you see any of these particular, these are certainly WhatsApps, and some are a little more mature than that. Now, for example, this one at Commercial Bank we picked up, it's in Sinhala. It's basically if you send the front and the back of your credit card to, I don't know if you guys can see this, but commercialbank@gmail.com. Apparently, you're getting 5,000 rupees. I know it sounds ridiculous. And generally, when I say this, these young guys get into bursts of laughter. But there is a segment of people that do take this seriously. And in fact, this particular one, we had to coordinate with CID, we had to coordinate with the bank and make sure that the bank actually had to put a statement out saying that it was not the case. Similar thing that happened here with People's Bank. If you look at something like this, for example, this again is in Sinhala, I apologize, but this is from the Labor Department, and apparently this is COVID time. You're getting $20,000. So at the time, dollar was 200. So 20,000 into 200, you can just multiply and see how much you're getting. And if you look at, for example, the link that's presented, it has nothing to do with the Labor Department. It's not even a LK domain. So again, you might be savvy to spot these things, but there might be a 1% out there that might fall for this trick. This, I'm sure you've seen various variations of this particular keys forward, which is why I said even still, despite us sending out a very strong message, me coordinating with several fact checkers out there and completely rubbishing this. Surprisingly, this continues to make rounds, and this is based probably Russian-based guys who are doing this. We traced it back to Russia, and it stopped there. And certainly, if you go to click on this particular link, it goes to a site that very much looks like Keel's site. It has the same logo, and it asks for your details. And if you do give your details, well, chances are nothing will happen. But probably a little while later, you will see either your account getting compromised or something along those lines. So there are variations of that. We've seen now Elephant House. This one is from Elephant House, where apparently you're getting free ice cream. Who doesn't like free ice cream, I ask. But certainly, you know, such is the nature. And the entire takeaway from all of this is there's nothing technically elegant here at all. This is, they're not even trying to hide it. For example, if you take the Labor Department thing, they're not even trying to hide it. It's just you are exploiting people's weaknesses, and phishing is very important. That's why, for example, for the university in Kathmandu, I did an entire 1.5-hour session on phishing, that's how much we can talk about phishing, for example, because it's such wide areas and so many different varieties of phishing. But it comes down to you being duped by you thinking something's trustworthy, you thinking something is, or someone is a particular thing or a brand or a person, to see they're not. And this is something that you need to be conscious about when you're dealing with this type of threat. Now, I have a small exercise for you, Lehan, because generally I do it with a big crowd.
Okay,
you
this
see,
is going to be fun.
This is 3 people out there. One person is fake. Would you want to take a gander which one it is?
One person is fake. There's 3 people out there. One person is fake. I'm gonna go with the little girl on the left-hand side corner.
Okay.
So I feel like that's a very I've seen it somewhere before, either like on Google search or Mkakai, I think something like that. Maybe
okay.
an image, I guess.
Okay, fair enough. I'll give you that. So I'll lock in that answer. You sure you don't want to phone a friend? Okay.
Right. Can I phone a friend? Let's get in Ivan as well. Ivan, any guesses, bro?
I'm also going to go with the first image. For some reason, it looks a bit off to me.
Okay, cool. Very good. Second set. Again, somebody's fake here.
I'm also gonna go. This is not being for that, you know. I feel like it's the first image here.
Okay. Any particular reason why you're saying that, or
just no, it's just a random guess because I don't know. These other 2 pictures, they kind of look genuine enough, but this looks like it was a set, like from a stock image or something like that. Okay. Do you know those generic images? I think it's something like that.
Okay. All right. One more time. And 3 girls. So take your pick.
The middle one.
Middle one. Okay,
The
so
expressions and everything.
all right,
it's
okay.
a bit
Makes
awkward.
sense. Makes sense. So if I recall, it was the first one on the left. Again, the
Yeah.
second one, it was
First one on the
first
left.
one left, and then one in the middle.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say, Lehan, I lied. None of these people are real. So none of these images are real. If you go to a particular website called this person does not exist.com, I've given the URL. I'll be happy to share it. And this is something called a random face generator. And now why this is important is, I'll come to the next part of my discussion. You guys and you, Ayman, both of you. You guys thought because I told you one person was fake, you were wired to look for one person. Yet you genuinely believe the other 2 people were real. Now, why that's important is for the next part of my discussion, stalkers and predators. Now, if any one of these young ladies, I'm sure you said the one in the middle looks a little off, but certainly any one of these 2 young ladies were to send you a friend request on Instagram, I'm sure 9 out of 10 times you will not hesitate to accept them. Probably the young gentlemen all of here. And this includes the ladies as well, because I do this for girls' schools. So then I just swap the images for boys. You don't think about it. And the question I asked then is, you have a person, they look real, and then probably chances are you'll start talking to them. Perhaps there'll be their profile picture, maybe a couple of pictures, they can say they're new to Instagram, and they start talking to you. And at one point, you might share where you go to school or your college. You might share where you live. That person might ask where your parents work. You might share that information. They might ask, do you drive? You might share that. And as you go along, you are probably inclined to share a lot of information with a person that does not exist. I just want to take a moment, pause, and think about that. So my advice to most of these guys is, if you haven't met somebody physically, and I think it's a lot of tendency, especially within this generation, and I don't blame you guys, because that's primarily how you connect, and COVID didn't help as well, is if you haven't met that person physically, or you don't have a mutual who you've met physically, chances are not to discuss certain topics. For example, your personal information, address, telephone number, any other identifiable information. Unfortunately, and again, you all might laugh, people have got caught to scams like this, or stalkers and predators. And you mentioned that you had a predator situation.
Stalk situation. I'll dive right into it after you discuss this. So.
Yes, I want to listen to that as well. So let me finish this. So stalkers and predators, because these guys are malicious purpose. And they're talking to you not because they want to be your friend, or they have a love interest, or they think you're cute. Unfortunately, they're trying to expose your information. And this is the danger that you guys face, because you are so open and accepting of people that you feel are real. And I'd like to listen to your story, Leah, about your predator experience.
Yes, we can't really call this person a predator, more of a stalker that kind of started annoying me. So what happened was, Mr. Asela, I'm online on Instagram, and I started talking to this person she claimed to be from the University of Jayawardhanapura.
Okay.
A bit older than me, and I started talking to her. She was interested in collaborating on this project with me, a writing project, and I was interested. But then it started getting a bit awkward, because she started contacting me at really off hours. And I don't do that a lot, because stranger danger, that was what I was brought up in my family with. Stranger danger, don't talk to strangers. But being the rebellious little child I am, I started talking to this person, and it got a bit weird. She started commenting about how I have good skin, and it got weird. And I stopped contact with her, and I blocked her off. And a few days later, a skincare company, basically an online shop, starts following me. I go through their products. They had some really good products like skincare, facial creams, cleansers, toners, and everything. So they had an offer going on. And I reached out to them and I gave them my address for delivery and everything. And a few days later, I get a phone call from that said university student who had showed up at my gate to deliver me the products. And it was really weird. And at one point I was considering like giving her information to the police and everything, but I didn't do that. I just gave her like a verbal warning saying, if you do this, I will go to police and everything. And then this woman found out that I work at a designated radio company. I do radio hosting. My voice is pretty recognizable, apparently. And this woman starts calling up my office, starts asking for me and everything. And it went to the point where I had to go and lodge a complaint to the multimedia police. So yeah, that is my experience.
So at least put it this way, you got off mildly.
Yeah.
Fortunately for you, but unfortunately for some youngsters out there, this story takes a very dark turn sometimes.
Yeah, it does. It does. Since I study law as well, Mr. Asir, and there are case studies that we follow up on where people have threatened people with their nude photographs, videos, even worse information, saying that they will leak out most of the information to school authorities, their parents, and they will blackmail them. That is something that's really happening out there. And then there are incidents where adults start messaging minors and try to convince them and groom them into doing sexual favors with them. And it's something that's truly heinous and that still exists here in Sri Lankan society. We've got people texting girls and guys online saying, "Araka karanna kamathida, meka karanna kamathida." And it's sad because as a nation, this is not what we expect ourselves to be.
Absolutely, and I'm glad that you segued right into it. So sexting is something I do talk about in the next slide ahead. But certainly, I think you raised an important point that I'm glad it came from you rather than me saying it, is that you are opening the doors for various entities to come. Now, part of these guys could be just hackers. Now, I had a very large hotel, not a hotel. They are a shop chain in Sri Lanka, and they got through this owner's personal account, and through that, basically the accounts are tied. So then they got to the shop's account. But then this guy just wanted Bitcoin and locked the account down, changed the account name, and wanted Bitcoin. So again, that was after about a day or two of chatting and sending a link and saying, click here. But certainly there are instances where people have actually gotten into a lot of trouble. And when you ask them what happened, tell me what happened, the anatomy of this, it comes down to, no, I spoke to a stranger on the internet, or, you know, I added this person online, or this person just sent me a friend request. And unfortunately, like I said, like you very correctly said, there's very sad stories of girls coming to meet, and they're expecting a young guy like you, and to see it's a very old gentleman who's there. So
I think an incident like that happened to one of my friends where he got onto this dating app and he started talking to this person. And in his bio and everything, it said that it was a 23-year-old. And they decide to meet and everything. And my friend is only 18 years old. They decide to meet and everything. And he goes to the place, and a 50-year-old person like drives up to me and he's like, "I'm him," and he just ran away immediately. But these sort of things happen. As you said, it happens on the daily, and these incidents link up to more heinous crimes such as rape and homicide, even, and murder.
Absolutely. Absolutely, and I'm glad you brought that up. So what we generally say, a few tips I recommend, but again, I'm sure you guys have more understanding this than me, because like you correctly said, you have a lot of experience listening to it. But if you are in such a situation, first of all, try to take as much screenshots as you can, and we talk the same about cyberbullying as well. And also, one thing is, more than all of this, is if you feel, and I think you did the right thing, Leha, where you felt something was off. Most of the time, the kids are younger and they don't know what's going on, and they feel something's off, but they're not mature enough to understand that something is off. It's a bad feeling. Then what we recommend is at least talk to a guardian or a parent. And I had again, an 11-year-old come up to me and said, but sir, my mother doesn't understand anything about the internet. How can I explain anything to her? Which is a fair point from that young girl's point of view. Which is what I told her is, listen, it doesn't have to be your parents, but someone who's a little older who understands the internet. So that could be a teacher, a mentor, a counselor, or anyone else. And again, and this is why I turn around back to the parents and say, it's vital as us immigrants, as I mentioned before, understand how some of these things operate. Because our kids are already there, living that world. And it continuously probably will get worse because we have stuff like the metaverse out there, which is a completely different ballgame altogether. And, that's where probably the youngest of our population would be in the future. And we have very little control over that. And some of the activities that we mentioned, the stalkers, the predators, pretending to be someone else, that will completely become calibrated in a metaverse kind of environment. So I think it was Wired magazine, one lady reporter, she said, I spent the entire 24 hours in the metaverse. And one thing she said, listen, I was sexually harassed in the metaverse because she went to a bar in the metaverse. And she said, listen, literally people crowded up on me and started groping my avatar. So are we prepared for these kind of things? And I know there's a lot of kids-centric games out there, Roblox and all that stuff. Those have direct messaging to people. Those have direct links to people. Avatars can go into separate chat rooms or breakout rooms or whatever. So certainly if you're not aware of these things and you don't have that understanding of it, and you don't give that awareness, we may be leading them down a path of danger. And that's, I think, something that you should keep to heart because you guys are a little more mature. You must turn around either for your younger sisters or younger brothers or the elders and take that effort, make them also aware of what's going on, because that responsibility lies with you because you are the natives of this land. We move on to cyberbullying. Lehan, is there any cyberbullying story you'd like to share with me?
Cyberbullying. I have not faced cyberbullying personally, but I know people who has. I knew a friend of mine. He was a bit of an overweight guy. And whenever he posts something online, people would go on his comments and be like, Batalaya, the fatty, look at yourself, stuff like that. And he would play it off in a very, careless sort of way, saying, it's just a comment, that's fine. Like even my teachers call me Batalaya. So it's okay. He didn't mind it at first. But then I went to a prominent all-boys Buddhist school in Colombo, a very famous school due to the recent, political situation here in our country. How it is.
Then I went to the other school. So carry on, Leah.
Okay, so you know how it is. It is in our schools, in the Sri Lankan education system. We don't really consider mental health. It doesn't matter. Punishments are corporeal, and the criticism teachers sometimes give students can be rather abusive emotionally. And this student was from my batch, and he suddenly stopped coming to school. He was a prefect at our college. A prefect comes to school every day, earlier than anyone else. Suddenly, he just stopped coming to school. He stopped responding to messages. He went completely off the grid. He had deleted his social media and everything. And one day, after about 3 months, he comes to school. We couldn't recognize him. It was as if he had like forcefully starved himself to death. He was like malnourished. He was like, with the and we also noticed that he had cut himself, like his wrist and everything. And we as like he was a part of our friend circle, and we like talked to him and we asked like what happened, and he was like, I got sick of looking at myself in the mirror. I didn't have this problem, but the comments that I got every other day on my social media, and then the harsh abusive language that the teachers had used kind of led me towards this. And it took him a lot of time to get back into a healthy weight. And what we were worried about is if he had the ability to cut himself, what would have happened if the bullying continued and if he went to a further extent? And this is not just one incident. There are more that we hear about every day. We hear more stories about people losing weight, going to the gym, this and that, simply because of the fact that they were bullied online, they were bullied in reality, whatever. Then we get stories of where people try to do really drastic changes to themselves because of cyberbullying. And even though it is reported that cyberbullying exists, I don't think that the older generation really considers this a huge thing. And even when it came to my incident with the stalker, one of the first things my parents asked was like, why? Just like, how did this happen? They didn't try to, think. They thought that I was the one who like forcefully everything. But the thing is, I think, as you said, since we are the natives, we as a generation have a responsibility to make sure that the immigrants and those who are about to enter into this field of cyber communication, to be taken care of, to be guided. And I think that our project here, Ncrypted, is a really good step that we are taking. So, Mr. Asila, shall we continue about our discussion about cyberbullying? Are there any enactments from the government to take care of these things?
I'm glad you asked. So I'm glad your friend found help. I hope he's seeing a counselor because cutting yourself is a very dangerous sort of point to be at. Generally, what I would advise is, because we're not psychologically trained, generally it would be advisable at that moment for that person to see a counselor, and it's not a bad thing. Everybody needs to see a counselor. My opinion is it is sometime or the other, because we have a lot of
Everyone has to. Our mental health is as important as our physical health.
Absolutely. If you go to the gym and no one has a problem with you going to the gym, you should have a problem going to a counselor just to unload some of your stress out. So very good question you asked. And actually, in my slide, before I get to the enactment parts, I just want to show you one stat. And this is taken from a publication. And I generally try to avoid overseas stats, but this is online violence against children in Sri Lanka National Research. This is done by UNICEF. Two things. One is girls face more cyberbullying, sexual exploitation, as well as cyberbullying online than boys. And 3 out of the 10 children is 15 and below, who participated in this study have experienced some sort of online violence. So that's something to think about. That's 30% of the child population.
I think these stats do actually make sense, because Mr. Asal, let's just pause for a bit. Let's take an example from our daily life, right? We go on TikTok, we go on social media, Instagram, Facebook, whatever. We see a really attractive female, right? If you go onto the comment section, half of it is filth.
Absolutely. And I know this is a sort of antithesis on social media, but social media themselves promote something called body dysmorphia, and that's probably
true. I agree. I think that's what happened to my friend. Like, he
exactly
was shamed exactly to a point where he started going online and he saw people with really ripped physiques and everything, and that caused body dysmorphia. I think it's also a fact that a lot of people who go to the gym, who work out regularly, who maintain a certain physique, also has a certain induced form of body dysmorphia.
Absolutely.
If you talk to people who have like really good physiques, and you talk to them and you start to, digress them layer by layer, you understand that they work out simply not because of the fact that they want to stay healthy. It's because of the fact that you have to maintain a certain image that is centered around social media and popular trends, and that causes body dysmorphia.
And sometimes they're working through, again, I mean, the other side of the coin is they're working through something on their own. I had a friend who was in the gym 24/7. This guy was bipolar. He unfortunately took his life some time ago. And because he told me those days, when I go to the gym and when I'm tired, those feelings go away. And that's why he's in the gym. So it's nothing to do with his physique. It's nothing to do with getting ripped. Of course,
It's
he
two
was ripped.
sides. It's like a two-edged weapon, but
Absolutely.
it's a known fact, Mr. Asela, that social media plays sometimes a big role in people's mindset.
Indeed.
And the way it, as you said, the way we utilize social media, it can either be good or bad. We should be able to navigate through it. I think that's one of the things you said at first, our ability to navigate through it in a safe way.
See, these are tools, Lehan, in the end of the
Yeah.
day. No one is telling you to go back to the Stone Age. I
Exactly.
I'm from a technology background, and I see enormous potential in social media and all the technologies we use. The fact remains, the catch-22 is, how do you use it safely? And that's why we're having conversations like this.
Yes.
Because listen, there's always danger. There's always danger in any technology. Any technology, pick anything out of the hat, any technology, there is a danger. The difference here is it's so integrated into our lives, and it continues to integrate into our lives. In a way, we have 5G coming, and this is something I wanted to speak at towards the end, but I will mention now, because we have 5G coming. What 5G means is, and probably you guys will not feel it because you are in a high-speed internet environment now. It's different for me because I came from
the beginnings of the internet here in Sri Lanka. Mr. Asela? All right, apologies, everyone. We seem to be facing a small technical difficulty. We shall continue soon. Until we get Mr. Asela back online, if you have any questions that you want me to moderate for you, if you've got any questions that you want me to ask Mr. Asela, if there's anything that you want to get answers for, if there's any concerns that you want to release, if there's anything that you want to convey to Mr. Asela, you can either unmute yourselves and ask at the end of the session, or you can let me know. You can also let it down here in the chat box so that we can read it out for you. And we are back.
sorry, I think I lost you guys there.
No worries, Mr. Asela.
That's fine. So coming back, I hope you heard about the 5G part.
Yes.
The point is, the moment it gets so integrated into your lives, you can't indistinguishable. The technology becomes indistinguishable, and it's part of your life. Then you have to really be disciplined enough to understand the extent to which you can use it and the extent to which it is helpful and destructive. If you don't have that awareness, then you go berserk, and all these other complications that we speak about, or we don't even understand yet. Like I said, the metaverse. How do you then distinguish? And this is a really important point of inflection. If you're on the metaverse, seamless internet all the time on 5G and above, how do you distinguish real life and the reality? What is your reality? And then we will have a situation where people would prefer their virtual reality life, which is not even probably what they look like. Yeah, what they look like in real life. They want to be a, I don't know, cat, to who they really are. And that complete disconnect is something that we're heading towards. And this is why we need to have more and more conversations like this, to make sure you guys are grounded or anchored at some point of, where do you want to be and where you're going and how technology plays a part in that. So to quickly answer your question on cyberbullying, people really forget that cyberbullying is indeed a crime. Yeah. I would like personally, my opinion, for example, if you take Japan, if you take some of Malaysia, UK, those countries have laws specifically targeting cyberbullying. There's legislation targeting cyberbullying. What we've done, since you're a law student, I'm sure you can relate, is we've ported stuff from the penal code and said, by the way, this is used for cyberbullying, and it works sometimes, it doesn't work in other times. So ideally, there should be targeted legislation on it. Sri Lanka is a little lagging in that aspect.
Sri Lanka's legal
But
system is a bit behind, but the penal code can, as you said, Mr. Asel, the penal code can be used to justify and prove certain points. For example, I think Section 345, 372, 483, all of these things, as I remember, there was a recent case study as well where someone got blackmailed with their nude photographs. And Section 345 was utilized to say that it was sexual harassment because no one can blackmail you with something as obscene as that. And
correct.
Unsolicited nude pictures coming in and out of your DMs, I think there was also
obscene publication
section for that. But
you can actually take the obscene publications.
Exactly.
I remember it as an ordinance, but apparently it's an act. You can take Section 2 and Section 3 on it as well, taken with maybe 3, 4, 5. And then you can use that. But again, the problem is it's a little complicated. And also, more than the law, it's the process which I have problems with. Because obviously, if you are going through some sort of harassment or cyberbullying, you have to go to a local police station. Now, the NCPA does a decent job. I must give them credit for that. But certainly 18 plus and you're in some sort of cyberbullying situation or any sexual harassment situation online, will come to sexting as well. You go to the police station, they don't have sensitivity training. Sometimes it's a girl that's good. They don't, not at all.
They don't. Because I've been in and out of police stations, not for heinous purposes, simply because of research and everything. But saying that, when it comes to these officers who are supposed to take care of harassment cases, rape cases, and everything and anything that's related to something that's way more detrimental, as you said, Mr. Asila, they do not have sensitivity training, right? They tend to I don't want to say overreact, but the way they treat the victim is not understood.
I would like to add, the victim gets secondary abused when they're going to make the complaint. And most of the time, and I will touch upon this when we go to the sexting part as well, this is why most of the time, especially ladies, don't want to come forward in these situations and reach out to people like us to try to solve the situation just before you go to the law. In a technology level or a technology layer, can this be retrieved? Can this be taken down? Can these messages be taken back? So sometimes varying degrees of success, but because the apprehension to go to a police station, the apprehension to go to CID, the apprehension to go to an NCPA even at times, because of the challenges that we mentioned, not only in our statute books, but in the way we go about implementing some of these laws, which is problematic.
As you said, Mr. I think it all comes down to sensitivity and being empathetic.
Absolutely.
That's
to their credit, the NCPA and the Women and Children
Child Protective Services and women, those agencies of government, they do their job on a top-notch level. But
and you see the difference because they've spent a lot of time working with agencies like the UN, and the officers there have been trained. So you see a mark if you go to a Women and Children's Bureau, you will see a marked difference in how those officers behave around you versus, let's say, you go to the Mount Lavinia police station.
Yeah,
it's chalk and cheese. It's absolutely chalk and cheese.
It truly is. So why don't we talk about what we can do to avoid cyberbullying, how we can, protect ourselves from it?
Yes. Well, very simple. Not many things. I mean, not very simple, but I'm generalizing. How do you hold the bully accountable? Screenshots is I know it's painful, but screenshots and keeping evidence of your bullying is very important. Avoiding interactions with the bullies. There's enough and more privacy controls, but unfortunately, most of the time, there was a survey done very recently. The English-speaking population actually have a better idea of privacy controls than the Sinhala-speaking, native Sinhala-speaking and Tamil-speaking populations. So I feel there we have failed them in terms of awareness, because obviously it's in English and you understand English, then you understand some of the privacy controls out there. But most of the time, because it's not in your native language and there's no help in your native language, they miss out on key privacy controls, even two-factor authentication for that matter. And because of that, the likelihood of you getting bullied is higher. So sometimes even just sitting with them and changing around their settings makes a world of difference for them. Personal information, I always say, think not twice, thrice about it. And also school counselors, an elder. When I say elder, might not be your parents, but at least someone who's understanding the situation. For example, someone like you, who understands the situation, who has a little bit of, who's understanding the law as well, would be helpful in situations like this in terms of cyberbullying. Few agencies you can approach. And again, we are also here to help, but Sri Lanka police is there, but again, varying degrees. CERT can help you do a takedown. For example, on Facebook or any other social media, and you see an unsavory post about you, you can ask CERT to do the takedown because they have what's called preferential access to Facebook and the social media platforms. Similarly, NCPA does the same. Two agencies, but I want to focus on, especially for the ladies, is one is bakamuno.lk, which has very important resources in terms of legal, as well as certain procedures you need to do if you're harassed online or you're facing cyberbullying or sexual harassment. And another agency that I work with is Women in Need. These guys have legal counsel, they have counselors, they have the legal aid. So they do a lot, and they work very closely with especially the NCPA and the Women and Children Bureau. So again, they have a hotline, 24/7 hotline. If you feel that you need someone to talk to, or you are under duress of some sort because of cyberbullying, especially Women in Need will be helpful. Sexting, since thank you for bringing sexting up. I don't need to mention to you guys what sexting is. We've all seen it, but what I want to discuss is the impact it has on the victim side. And I have a few stories I can share. One is the Gampa judge actually called me, the High Court judge, and said that there was a lady who was a nurse. She had an affair 10 years ago with the fellow, 10 years ago. And she got married now to a doctor. It was a proposal. On the day of her wedding, and you probably understand where this is going now. Obviously, there are some questionable photographs of this lady, and this was shared when they were in the relationship 10 years ago. Of course, this was sent to the husband, and the husband, was a very traditional guy, and this was a proposal. Decided that she can't. They called off the marriage, and unfortunately, this individual complaint was made to CID. There was enough and more evidence, but again, the case dragged on to about 1.5 years, if I'm not mistaken. And then I helped in with some of the technical evidence. So after 1.5 years, this person was found guilty, but her complete life had changed at that point. And so much so that the judge called me and thanked me for helping, but said this person has left the country now. Similarly, a few more stories. One is I had a frantic call from a girl, I think based in Japan, if I'm not mistaken. So she was based in Japan. She had a boyfriend. Again, they were in a relationship, perfectly fine. They were, sharing images with each other, and the roommate of the boyfriend, because obviously it was a dorm and they were together, got hold of some of these pictures, sent those pictures to that girl, and said, "If you don't send me some more pictures, I will publish these." Fortunately, when they got in touch with me, I said, Japan is very strict on this type of thing. So we got in touch with Japanese authorities through the local authorities here. And immediately they took action. So I urge anyone who's going for overseas studies, be very careful, because although the law is a little slow and heavy here, you will not face the same slowness in other countries. Immediately this guy was picked up and almost deported to the extent, because of course they frown upon this type of thing. Third story is again not a young lady, but a lady, very senior position in a very large corporate, very known large corporate in Sri Lanka, got broke up with the boyfriend again, some questionable images. These were sent to entire senior management and all of our vendors. All of our vendors. So quite distraught. She went into depression. We had to, me along with the wonderful folks at Women in Need, had to put her to counseling, managed to, I think, get her out of a very bad place. It would have been extremely bad had it continued. But certainly it changes people's lives. And one more story, this again happened to a very close friend of mine. This guy is a very, very senior person now in a technology company, a well-known technology company. And he was having a relationship with a girl at the time. And he broke up. And to this guy's credit, because I know this guy, he's not that type of person. He never asked for images or stuff like that. But he wanted to break up with the girl. And because the girl knew that he was going to break up, she started sending images of herself. And the question is now, then of course,
Wait,
guy said,
can I, okay. So again, it falls down to it being unsolicited and non-consented.
Unsolicited, non-consented, and this is where it takes a very interesting turn. Most of the images he had deleted, some had remained in his cache. Then what happened is, I think they had contacted the local police, and the father was quite an influential chap. Got hold of this boy's laptop. Unfortunately, now images are there. Obscene Publication Ordinance, sorry, Penal Code and the Obscene Publication Act comes into play. Serious legal trouble. Fortunately for him, he had saved the chats, saying, I don't want any of this. I didn't want any of this. Don't send me this stuff. And that, and of course, there was technical evidence from our part, really saved him. So what I wanted to show is there are different variations of all of this. But certainly sharing unsolicited images is one thing. But even when you're in a relationship and you share something in trust, you mustn't, break that trust and make sure that these images are widely shared. And what happens is you are destroying somebody's future. And I've seen it happen time and time again, especially the girls, where they have a trajectory in their life that they're heading. And unfortunately, it just comes to a screeching halt because of this stuff. And the onus it's not the victim's fault, but our system and the way we handle it, we always make the victim feel as if it's their fault. And the first thing I always tell them, it's
adding on to what you just said, Mr. Asela, if you go to the police station to file a complaint for sexual assault via sexting or mage nudes leak, first question these authorities ask, exactly.
And that is part, my friends, none of your bloody business.
Exactly. And right? I also need to give you a story. This reminds me. So I have a friend. He is a huge tattoo enthusiast. He has a lot of tattoos. He was in a very toxic relationship. And the girl he was dating at the time had a huge, massive argument. She lived abroad. I'm not going to disclose any information. But what basically happened was, since this person had tattoos, most of what the girl tried to leak was something that was very recognizable. Easily off the bat, you can tell this is this person. And what she did was, it was so heinous. She basically cropped out his face and head. Body parts stick to crop karaga. She was threatening him, if you don't do this, for me, if you don't get back together with me, I will share things. It got to the point where he is now studying abroad. I'm not going to say the country. He was in Sri Lanka, but he's now studying abroad because he can't, live here because it's all out there.
And I mean, these are some of the stories we can share. There are YouTubers, famous influencers, so many people. And just because someone is famous doesn't mean...
We can circle this back to deep fakes as well.
Exactly. We'll come to that. But, so many people, so many layers of people. learned people, undergraduates, students. So it's especially the ladies. And I think especially falls the responsibility falls on the gentleman. I'll end with that when we go on to the next one. It falls on the gentleman. Because if you get a link, I'm sure you know the parlance, no? A link again. Why would you demean a person's? Because there's an entire industry out there. If you really want to, look at that type of thing, there's an entire industry out there. It's worth $1 trillion. You know where to go to. Why would you demean a person? Their personality, their self-esteem. It's similar to stabbing them in the face by looking at these things. Is it morbid curiosity? What is it? Because it must stop with you. It has to stop with you.
It's a gruesome violation of a person's privacy and individuality.
Absolutely. And this country, Lehan, unfortunately, we don't have a culture of privacy in the country.
True.
So this is again something that you guys need to pick up and run with, to inculcate the culture of privacy and inculcate the culture of obscurity. There are certain things that, although I do seminars, I do certain things, there are certain elements of my life I do not wish to disclose. There are certain elements, actors, film stars, wherever. You as Leha, there are certain things that you want to disclose and you don't want to disclose. Exactly. And we must respect that. And if you come across something that is to the contrary, you must have the maturity, especially among your generation, to say, no, we are not going to indulge in this type of thing. Because this thing occurs because there's an indulging population. That is why it's said. And if you stop it at the source, if you cut the water, the fish dies. And therefore, that is what you must try to attack. So when next time you get this in your groups, in your college groups or school groups or whatever, you must be the one person saying, no, don't do this. Please delete it. This is all nonsense. We don't want to see this. If you stop that, know that you're saving somebody's life. Literally, you're saving a person's life. With that, we will get to another important point.
Before we go to the point, Mr. Asela, I must take a moment to thank you for bringing out a topic that most people consider to be controversial. I think that's something that we should truly appreciate about you, because that segment, just little segment we had right now, it is something that is vital and important to us, the natives of the cyber generation, whatever. And I think it's really good that we touched on it. And I think it enlightened us on what to do and how to stay safe. And if you missed out on what Mr. Asela and I digressed just now, there's Bakamuno, there's Women in Need. Mr. Asela is there in Women in Need. If you have any issues at all, you can always reach out to us so that we can make sure that you are okay.
Plan, it destroys people's lives. And if you've seen what I've seen, talk to the people the way I've talked to people, seen how helpless they are, you will never, ever forward again. And that's something I never do, because I see the real world impact of it. Because it's not just another person in your WhatsApp.
True.
Anyway, with that, we can move on to another important element that I want to discuss. Again, I'll just brush over this, is social media overshare. Now, social media as well as overshare in general. Now, when I say overshare, there is that one friend that comes to your mind. He wakes up in the morning, you see his story. Fellow is brushing his teeth, you know he's brushing his teeth. He's getting ready for school, you know he's there. He's in the bus, you know he's in the bus. You can literally map his entire life, ball by ball commentary, because he's giving a ball by ball commentary to his life. Now, one thing you must remember is there are enough, and you are attracting threats to yourself. You've seen enough and more people do this when those days when people used to travel. I think traveling is very less now, but you've seen this passport and boarding pass, and the airplane emoji or something like that. So, and people do that. Now, there was an instance where somebody had done that. A hacker had seen that photograph because it was public. He had hacked into the airline's reservation system because it was the boarding pass, he had basically used that particular boarding pass. So when that person went to give the boarding pass, his seat was already taken because he had, out of spite or just wanted to mess with them. But that's the danger of social media overshare. And that's one highlight of you broadcasting some of, unsolicited details of your life in social media has its repercussions. There was another story where one guy, I think he went on a Europe tour and basically lived in the UK. He went on Europe tour. The robber sent him a friend request on Facebook weeks before, managed to social engineer and got into his friend list. So literally he knew when he was out of the house, this guy walked into his house. He's out for 2 weeks. He knew that because obviously he had told everybody he's out for 2 weeks. Lived in his house, robbed everything. And obviously knew when he was coming back because obviously, picture of the airport and landing and all that. So he had nicely cleaned out his house. Now, I think these are probably, you might think, extremes, but I'm sure you have stories you want to share as well, Lesha.
Yes, Mr. Asir. So this is something that happened to a friend of mine. He was someone who would post about everything and anything about his daily life. If you go to his IG stories, you have a story of him waking up. You have a story of him walking out of the house. You have a story of him getting onto the bus. Bus ke last number you can easily figure out. Let's say we like back in college, we would sneak out of college to go out, have fun and whatnot. We would never invite this person because he would always post a story. And adding on to what happened to him, so he got into an argument with another kid from another college, famous college as well. And he used to go to Sigma for classes. So no one really posts like you go to a class, right? No one posts like you're here in the class, you're getting out of the bus or anything. Unfortunately for my friend, he had posted him, going to Sigma, coming out of Sigma. These people somehow found his social media, saw his stories. Lasanta went and beat him up by using his social media stories, basically to track where he is. See, the point I'm trying to put across, as Mr. Asir, you said, is you shouldn't overshare. It can be something as mundane and as frivolous as someone following your social media to beat you up in a very college, childish manner. But it can be something as explicit and as grotesque and brutal as someone robbing you blind. And as you said, some people
anything in between.
Driver's license. I got
driver's my license. I got my license. I got my passport. Today's and thing is this, we'll probably touch on this if we can on passwords. You already know who his pet is, and this is why I said don't use your dog's name, because we all know your dog's name is Sandy. Where you put the dog, that fellow is there on your, and probably a highlighted one also. So no point you putting Sandy 123 because we know. Mother's birthday, we know. Your birthday. Some people put it on their bios itself. Wish me on and whatever.
Why?
So there's why, I mean. And also don't forget, I mean, when it comes to you guys, you will start work. You go to college. I mean, you are, of course, there are people who go to colleges, there are people who will apply for scholarships, MBA, masters, eventually try to enter a corporate. And this is a little secret no one tells you. When I get a CV, the first thing I do is I go through their, I Google their name, obviously. And obviously, the first thing that comes up is their social media. And we, as recruiters, go through their social media. And if you've really posted questionable content, chances are you won't even get hired. And there's a very interesting story that happened recently, I guess. So there was this girl who got into a NASA internship. And she went on Twitter and said, oh, woohoo, I've got into NASA. Bad word, bad word, bad word. And then somebody had commented on that saying language, nothing more, just language. This girl being young, who the hell are you? And bad word, bad word, bad word, bad word, bad word. To see that was the director of the internship program at NASA. So you can imagine where the story is going. She never got the internship. And of course, one thing I want all of you guys to remember is the internet never forgets. And it's all well and good. I'm fortunate, and I always tell people this, I'm fortunate the stupid things I did when I was young are not recorded online. Because we don't have always an unblemished record. We have done questionable things. But I'm glad that it was not recorded online because the internet never forgets. The problem is you guys will eventually become distinguished business leaders, eventually become respected corporate individuals, respected scholars, leaders. And if anyone goes back 10 years, and this is what happens now, right? People go back 10 years, look at a tweet, they've said something questionable, bam, you're canceled. So again, it comes down to discipline of what you are sharing online. And is it absolutely required for you to share something of that nature online? Now, if I look at a person, for example, who, let's take your friend for an example. That person sends me a CV and I see that he is a ball-by-ball commentary man. I will have questions. Will this person be confidential with my company information? Because he has this pathological desire to share everything on his social media. And inadvertently, he has become undesirable as a hire without doing anything. I haven't looked at his qualifications. I haven't looked at his CV. I haven't looked at his referees, nothing. The fact that I go to his social media and see this is a person who shares everything 24 hours tells me, okay, should I, it's a question in my mind. It's a fair question as a person doing the hiring on the other end. And these are things you don't think about. Should I hire this guy? Should I look tomorrow if my company is doing a merger, will this guy announce it on social media? And it's confidential information. It's as simple as that sometimes. And one thing I do tell most students is your college applications, they actually go through your social media. So, for example, if you get an Oxford scholarship, very prestigious, but yet you've said something very off color at someone, and people do this, right? They comment when they're emotional, they comment when they're angry, they say things that they don't mean to. And they say things they regret, and that's part of growing up. You do things you regret and you learn from those experiences. But unfortunately, nowhere in human evolution has there been an instance where everything is recorded. Everything everyone has done is recorded. Of course, you can look at the CV frescoes as well, and you can see that people have scribbled questionable things, but then that's not the point. Here we know exactly who that person is, and that sort of makes you think. When you overshare things online, especially on the internet, especially on social media, always think twice. Not only now, because obviously you guys are not going to be in this mode for the rest of your life. You are going to mature. There are certain stages in your life that you will enter. And 10 years down the road, Lehan, I'm assuming you're 20.
Yes, I am. I'm 20.
Okay. So imagine you looking back at your social media posts when you're 30 or when you're 40 or when you're 50. Would you have the same desire when you're looking at it? No, you'll be like, oh, shoot, what silly nonsense did I do?
That's a really good question, Mr. Asela.
Hey, look at it now. Look at it now. Forget all this. Look at stuff you posted 5 years back. Look at right now stuff you posted 5 years back. Yes.
Social media 5 years ago, but let's see. So my social media career begins because I started writing poetry and stuff. So let's see if there's anything put up, regrettable. But no, honestly, my social media, it's basically me promoting my projects and stuff like that, me hanging out with my friends. I don't think I posted anything that I would regret, because growing up, there was always this social media presence that everyone followed, right? Like, you have to be a
Mm.
cool kid, you can't post certain things. So never really posted anything that could have, harmed my image. Because personally, I went to a college with really strict rules and regulations for people who are taking up offices in prestige clubs. For example, I was the president of the intra club of so and so. People know what the club is. I'm not going to digress the information, but people know. So in my college, you weren't allowed to post certain pictures. You weren't allowed to post yourself online in certain ways. You weren't allowed to keep your beard growing, your hair growing. You weren't allowed to wear rings. I'm obviously out of college now, so I can do those things. But you were advised or made sure that you maintained a certain image in your online presence. I think that's something that a lot of companies do to models as well.
Mm.
In Sri Lanka, you have to maintain a digital presence. And that's something that I had to go through I used to work for a radio company. And I had to maintain my social media in a said standard so that, whoever looks me up knows this is me, my brand is this. So I think Sachin, all of us have.
I like to stop at that word, my brand. And I
Yes.
think you're fortunate because you've had a certain training, and especially at a young age, you've been exposed to a corporate where they've trained you to look after your image online, and you're fortunate that way. Most of your friends might not be, most of your friends might not have that experience. Do me a favor, I mean, not you, I think you're fine, but anyone who's joining us today, go on Google and Google yourself. See what comes up. Look at your images. Look at the content. Can you be proud of that? Because that's not the results only you will see. Everybody will see it. And tomorrow, if a person like me, who's very senior to you guys, I'm very much older. If I'm Googling that, and if I'm looking at that, and I want to hire you for a project or want to hire you, something, is that the image you want me to see in terms of personal branding? This has nothing to do with being superficial, by the way, on social media. This is got to do with personal branding. And I think, Lehan, you touched on an important point of personal branding, how you want to project yourself, how you want to be in front of people. And that is important for you to understand. And that's something you need to manage with your digital footprints that you're leaving behind in the sand. You guys will leave more than me because my entire existence of life might be equal to 1 year of content that you guys post, because I might not post as much. And given the evolution that I've seen, we might not post much, but you guys will. And you will continue to post a lot. And because of that, leave aside the social media companies using these images and the information they have for their nefarious purposes. We'll get to that in a bit. But in terms of your branding, in terms of you as an individual, and you have a future ahead of you, what is the image you want to project to a corporate, to a college, to an employer? Is that there right now existing? And that's something, a question you must ask yourself at the end of this lecture. Secondly, of course, don't forget. Now, Lehan, tell me, I'm sure you're on Instagram.
Yeah, I am.
Okay. Snapchat?
Snapchat is there, but I don't really use it because I can't maintain streaks.
Yeah, I don't understand streaks. So. TikTok, I'm assuming? Yes?
TikTok is there, yes.
Okay.
TikTok is quality.
Now, did you pay for any of these services?
No, but
no?
If I am to promote an event or something, I would have
No. I'm asking. That's completely different. That's digital marketing. I'm asking, when you enrolled on these services, did you pay anything?
No, sir. No.
Okay. So, okay, then you consume a service. I'm asking you because you've been in a corporate environment. So you're consuming a service. There's no enrollment fee. Who's the product?
Us.
Bingo. You're the product. You're the guys. See, Facebook has $1 trillion worth of revenue on advertisement. 90%, 96% is their revenue comes from advertising. To whom? To you. And this may all sound harmless. Yeah, so what? I don't mind seeing a pet ad somewhere. No. And this is where people miss the point. I take Facebook because I'm old and I can relate to Facebook, but this is the same for anything that Meta owns, by the way. Facebook has 6,600 data points about 3 years ago on you. Now, when I say a data point, age, sex, location, device, battery, number of hours of screen time, OS you use, location, when do you wake up, when do you go to sleep, what are the posts you like, especially Instagram. When you're looking at a certain post, it will notice that your pupils are dilating. And therefore, meaning that you like that type of post. That's why in your suggested feed, you get, that's how all that starts. Where you put your thumb in the screen, what do you say sometimes? What do you search while your social media is being open? Every 6,600 data points. So much so that there was a study done about 3 years ago. Facebook can out you in terms of a sexual orientation even before you can, because they know. That's how well these guys do their job. Now, the question you must ask yourself is, they know what you like, your dislikes, likely to join a gym, likely to eat out or eat in, likely to watch movies at a theater. These are some of the data points that they have on you. Likely to go on a theater or watch entertainment indoors. So many data points. Then the question comes, if they know so much about you, they can manipulate you to like or dislike a thing without you making a conscious, independent choice of it. Because they know what your prejudices are.
So
they know what your likes
Mr.
are.
Akhil, this raises the question, right?
Manufactured consent.
Exactly. Where is our privacy? Aren't they manipulating us in a way?
Absolutely. Indeed, Lisha. And this is the question. This is the question that we must ask the big tech companies. Where are you heading with this? And of course, now Sri Lanka, I'm sure as a law student, we recently passed the Personal Data Protection Act. I was fortunate to be part of those policy discussions. But is that enough? I mean, you have to form an authority. You have to hire privacy professionals. They're leaving right now the country. How effective will that be versus tech companies that have trillions of dollars at their disposal? So listen, even if the European Union has fines for Google, $200 million. It's a nothing. For a company like Google, $200 million is just change. For a company like Meta, $1 million, even $1 billion fine is nothing for them. Because that's the amount of money that they have. But what are they doing with it? And then the question comes of Cambridge Analytica. Question comes of you agreeing to things. Question comes of elections. Question comes of you being manipulated to like or dislike anything. So these are questions you must ask. And is your privacy for sale? Because in this day and age, we say privacy is a luxury. It's not the default setting, Your privacy is a luxury that only the rich and famous can afford. But think about it. There are certain services that you need to use, or you need to get out of all this. But we need to find a middle ground. That's why we are trying to fight with big tech as well, to get to a certain policy landscape where they don't manipulate this data and don't manipulate individuals. Do you know Facebook once did a study where they kept on showing negative stories to people, and the other group, positive stories? They found that their mood changed. The people who saw the negative stories, their mood became worse. Some even became depressed. The people who saw positive stories, their mood improved and they had excellent days. Some got promoted. They went on to do amazing stuff. So, are we not the lab rats? Is our consent being manufactured? I'll leave you with that question. Something for you to ponder about. Deep fakes is something that, again, will segue into this, but more than anything, especially for guys like you, deep fakes is important because the way you consume information is primarily video-based now, not like us. I still prefer text-based, image-based stuff, but for you guys, it's primarily video-based. It's very easy if you've seen some of the Instagram, what do you call it, masks or filters. You can change your face and you look like an actor. So that's literally deep fakes. But the point is, there will come a time in the very near future where, let's say you, Ayman, is saying something that you're not saying. You never said that. But it's very controversial. And there's a WhatsApp forward going around that you said it. Now, how are you going to tackle this type of situation? And this is the challenge that's going to happen because of deepfakes. You may have situations now, of course, you can, if you go to YouTube right now and type Obama deepfake, you will see Key and Peele actor. I think, was it Peele? He's doing a deepfake of President Obama. It looks like him, sound like him. Think of that, the repercussions. We're in a war situation right now with two countries, a proxy war, where one side is a nuclear-powered country and the other side is a nuclear-powered country. Imagine how much can go wrong if tomorrow President Putin comes and says, I've decided to unleash a nuclear arsenal on the western coast of the United States. I've already given the launch orders. It's on its way. You've got 1 hour. What would the response be? The US would respond immediately. But what if that video was a deep fake? What if that particular video released to a news agency was a deep fake and no one did the verification? So this is where the danger lies. Certain countries like the USA and China, they've done laws on this to, digital manipulations. They have to indicate if there's a digital manipulation taking place. I have had a student she is from the University of California. She is doing a very interesting thesis on how, from digital forensics point of view, you can find out these stuff, which is a very important thing because going forward, there might be a girl's nude that's online and it might not even be her. It might be a very traditional adult actress that this image has been ported into, and that is happening right now in the United States. I have not got.
We don't need to go as far as the United States. If we take Sri Lanka, for example, due to this person's privacy, we're not going to divulge into it. But there were certain Sri Lankan celebrities that were deep faked and that went around and think that caused a huge racket. And she had to come out and give a huge public statement saying this is not me and it's all lies.
I will tell you something because I was involved in that matter. That was actually not a deep fake. That was just a adult film actress who happened to look like this person, unfortunately. And then it happened to a parliamentarian also, a young parliamentarian. Again, it was the same situation. We found out that it was a adult film actor who's based in Kerala who happens to look like this particular MP at certain angles. So again, not deep fakes, but the interesting question is if it does become a deep fake, if there's irrefutable evidence and there's the person, the face and everything, then we have to get into digital forensics. We have to prove that that particular video is a manufactured video and not that person. So that's going to take time. There are tools for it right now. I think GitHub has a few tools on it, but certainly the bad guys are far ahead than the good guys, especially when it comes to deepfake. So this is something I want you to think about. When you're consuming information, when someone sends you a video on WhatsApp or something like that, just take a step back and check your prejudice, check your biases, and check the sources. You can check those three, it'll save you a month of Sundays. Okay, quick activity. It's 4:30, but certainly, usually I do it on a whiteboard. But what I will do is, Leshan,
so if you want, this goes to the technical team. Can we utilize the whiteboard here on Zoom? Is that possible, sir? Do you want to give it a try that way?
No, it's okay. I will just say it, but if you can take the takeaways on it, it's fine. Because it works better when it's physical. But let's say you like, now the example I take is chocolate. Because obviously password best practices, and we're getting into the digital hygiene part of it, which I will explain. But when I say passwords, the best practices that we say is don't use the sequential numbers. Okay, before we start on this, why passwords are important is they are still the primary tool that we use to authenticate in this digital environment that we use. So there's services, there's banking services, social media, your academics, everything, we use a password, unfortunately. We will come to a stage where you will use your face, your thumbprint or something like that, but we haven't got there yet, despite some of the devices having those. We still rely on the passwords because the internet is built on passwords, unfortunately. So you having a good philosophy when it comes to passwords is vital. In your lifetime, you will see passwords retiring, but certainly for the moment, bear with me while I give you a few pointers on it. Don't use sequential numbers. We've all seen this. Leshan at 123, Leshan at 456, Leshan at 789 is not a good password. Don't include your birthday in your password for reasons I've mentioned before, because people overshare. And chances are I can just go to perhaps Leshan's or Ayman's social media right now. I'll find out what your birthday is. And if it's something along those variations, it's very easy. There are nice little scripts that will help me break into your accounts. Use a combination of at least 8 letters. So I'll show you a trick. Combine different unrelated words. Do not use names found in dictionary. Actually, I had a 11-year-old boy tell me, sir, I go to the dictionary and I open a page and then that is the password I use. I say, very good. But there's a certain thing called password attack. Dictionary attack. Dictionary attack is literally the bad guys have loaded the dictionary words into a script. So it'll run through all the combinations you find in dictionary, plain text, of course. And it's not going to be much use. But it's a good start. I don't say it's a bad thing. Of course, we talked about reusing your passwords. I'll come to that. And I will come to password manager. So what we do is, now the example I use the word chocolate. So you know how the word chocolate is made. If you use the word chocolate as chocolate, that's not going to be very successful because it's plain text password. You don't have special characters. The idea is for the word chocolate, and chocolate won't be something attributed to you. It's probably, let's say you like chocolate and therefore you're using the word chocolate. You can swipe out. Now, let's say if it's the letter C, you can make it 3. So the letter O, perhaps you can make it the 0. And you see what I'm going with this. You can swap out the letters itself. You can look at the keyboard. So when you know it's chocolate, but you've made a combination of letters, characters, and numbers that only you would know looking at a keyboard. Because the password is just on the top of your mind. It's chocolate. But the way you type it is important. And ideally what we say is a little more than 8 characters. So the more characters, the better. So if you like chocolate milk, for example, hyphen it and make it milk. A can be the @ symbol. L can be something else. There's an E with a little cocker. I don't know if you've seen on certain keyboards. You can use that without the...
Yes.
Yes, yes. So, so many different combinations. And that's what you use. Now, then I told you one more important thing. I said, don't reuse the passwords. So if you're having trouble doing all this, and this is a little too much mental gymnastics for you, there's things called password managers. Listen, if you're going to pay for your Game Pass on your Xbox or your, the other one, you might as well, PlayStation, that was the word I was looking for. If you're doing that, you might as well invest. It's only a couple of dollars a month. I know that's still a lot of money, but it's for your own safety because your credit card information and all of that is there. And sometimes I know, especially guys like you use your parents' credit cards. So because I had a situation where I had to deal with a distraught parent saying, Mr. Asela, there's so many charges on my credit card. I don't know what this is. And I looked at it. I took a moment and I said, where is your son? He said, oh, he's there. I called him. I said, son, now you have to tell me very clearly. Have you used your mother's credit card? Yes, without her knowing, I've added it to my Game Pass. Right. Have you used it somewhere? To see this chap has used it a few places. Well, long story short, it has got leaked and then obviously it has been used this lady lost about 200K worth of money. And then we had to talk to the bank. We had to, big process, get the card cancelled, and big hullabaloo. But the point is, you can avoid all that if you have good, strong password practices. But again, the anatomy of that was this guy kept on using the same password over and over again. So that's a little bit about passwords. So right now, think of something that you like. Some people, your favorite book. So it's Wuthering Heights. So I don't know, I'm old. Oliver Twist. Or I don't know what you guys read now. So anything like that.
Mr. This is a question that I need to ask, right? So
Sure.
This is something that's on just DM me right now. What about using significant other's name as a password?
No, absolutely not. Oh, actually, I'm glad that person asked that question. So now when I do these exercises, boys schools, girls schools, I said, this is all very fine. I've shown you how to create a very strong password, but this is all no point. Because the first thing you buggers do is when you get into a relationship, you share your passwords with your significant other. And a very interesting story I have is, this boy was working at a organization which we were consulted because they got cyber attacked. And they were quite puzzled because they had a very sort of robust cybersecurity. And they were wondering how the bad guys got in. So we went around, and this guy was the more recent hire, young chap. So then I asked, then we checked his email address, not the company one, but to see his other one. The girlfriend knows all his email, the passwords. This guy reuses the passwords. He had reused the same password to his corporate email. So, his girlfriend also uses the same password. So the girlfriend password that got exposed in a data breach, obviously somebody had figured out that these two are, in a relationship. And then they figured out this boy is working in this organization. And, lo and behold, here you are. So significant others.
I think that answers.
You I think you got
question.
the answer. You got the answer
Yes.
you were looking for. No,
The person
because
who just DM me the question, I hope Mr. Asela answered your question. So don't use the significant other's name or anything as your password.
Because it's the same as using your birthday or your dog's password or anything like that. Actually, I have one thing. Okay, this is something I just wanted to show you guys as well. We are the last bit. This is again Sri Lanka. And well, 35% of the people use same password. 36.4% haven't changed their password since. This is the government sector, by the way, but it's the same for private. 45% are unaware that the email accounts have been compromised. 39% of people open attachment from unknown person. This is very important. This is from Sri Lankan youth. 65% disclose the email address, 47% disclose the contact numbers, 24% disclose the work addresses. You can see why email password is important. 24%, 1 in 4 people, never change their password, ever. So you can understand the service you joined 3 years ago, password is still there. And the danger you run is that password gets exposed. All your keys to all your castles are ready to be entered. Few little infographics I don't share. Well, don't share your toothbrush or your password. And one more rule of thumb I tell my students is when you're changing your toothbrush, change your password. Then some fellow was like, sir, but I don't change my toothbrush. I said, then cybersecurity is least of your problems. Please go and meet a dentist. Because generally what they say is 6 weeks you change your toothbrush, and that is the rule of thumb to change your password if you can. If it's too much of a tedious exercise, like I said, password managers are always there. This sort of highlights the point I made. Your dog's name is not a good password. Dog, cat, girlfriend, boyfriend is not a good password. Because we were talking about exposing certain data, there's this site called I Have Been Pawned, PWNED. Go to this site, type your email address. You will see all the times your email address was associated with the data breach. If you have, even today after this presentation, and you see your email address being there, immediately change your password, because chances are the bad guy knows your password already. And if you haven't activated two-factor authentication, I suggest you do it immediately, in haste. certain cyber hygiene practices I just want to share. Cyber hygiene, just like because of COVID, this becomes very easy for us to teach. Well, we know the hygiene practices we used to do when COVID was there.
Mr. Asela, we've got a question from the audience.
Please,
And the
go ahead.
question is from Rotaract Diresh.
Mhm.
Rotaract Diresh, you can go right ahead and ask Mr. Asela the question you had in mind.
Hi, Mr. Asel. I was just listening to your point about passwords. So I mean, I agree with the point that you shouldn't have the same password for every account. But what about a different variation of the same password?
Absolutely, you're spot on, and thank you for highlighting that. So once you created, let's take the chocolate example. So if chocolate milk is your password, you can have variations as long as you can recall it. For example, again, I take Facebook because it's the easiest one for me. So chocolate milk for Facebook could be one password because you are in Facebook. Chocolate milk for work, at work, could be another one. Chocolate milk for Instagram could be another one. But again, you have to make sure that you insert the special characters and stuff that I mentioned. But
what about
you
varying
can have
between uppercase and lowercase letters for passwords?
not on its own. So uppercase, lowercase works, but also special characters are important because uppercase and lowercase will make sure the risk is less. But if you insert special characters, like if there's an A, you put an at, and so on and so forth, then it becomes harder to actually. The point is it becomes harder to crack because it takes longer to crack. The more special characters you put in, it becomes longer to crack. And that's why we say, so the risk is lower for you when you have a longer password with uppercase, lowercase, and special characters, all three. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
No problem. So if I am permitted to proceed, cyber safety. So
Mr. Asela, let's proceed. And thank you for answering the question, Mr. Asela. Diresh, I think Mr. Asela answered your question. And I think that's really good in a way so that we know what we can use as variations for our social media, our work, and everything. So, Mr. Asela, let's proceed. Thank you, Diresh, for answering the question, and Mr. Asela as well for answering.
Thank you, Diresh. So COVID made it very easy for us to know what our hygiene practices are. Stay 6 feet apart, wear a mask, wash your hands. That's good to save you from COVID. In cyberspace, there are a few more practices you can use to keep yourself safe. One is manage your social media profiles. I've discussed this. Backups, I'll come to backups because there's a little trick you can remember the backups by. Strengthen your home network. Now, when I mean strengthen your home network, nothing too technical because I don't want to get techie with you guys. But if you are, when the broadband people come and install a router, please immediately change from the default password. Because chances are, if you go right now, most of the Huawei routers that we use, both telcos use this. All the telcos in Sri Lanka use Huawei routers. And if you have the router number, a model number, you can find out the default password very easily. And if you haven't changed it, you are inviting somebody to hijack your home network, which is not ideal. So strengthen your home network, at least change the password and keep it with you in a safe place. Don't write it down in digital media. Use strong password. We have discussed this. Now keep your software updated. Why software updates are important is not because they're pesky and they're annoying, but because the big tech companies work very hard to ensure that their code is safe. And they periodically discover holes in their code that somebody can exploit. So why you need to keep yourself updated, and also why you need to have licensed software. This is another important point, is because these particular updates come to you and you're at less risk if you continue to regularly update your software, your phone, your machine, your gaming devices, or so on. Because if you don't, the risk is higher. It's like walking without a mask into a confined space. Chances are you may get COVID. So these are some, and of course, avoid opening email attachments. This is true for social media as well now, because a lot of times now the scam is that people send you a link. It's a crypto link, or it's some sort of link where you're tempted to click on it, and you shouldn't do that. One thing we did discuss is check your privacy and security settings. So I would advise all of you all, I think most of you all are savvy enough, but don't leave it on public unless you want to. Now, for example, my Instagram is public. That is by choice, because I know I will not share any important stuff there. So it doesn't matter to me. But certainly, if you feel you want your privacy respected in a certain way.
Mr. Asela, just another question, right? This is something that I got DM'd right now. So what about maintaining a public account and a private account?
That's ideal.
So,
that's ideal, because then you compartmentalize your content. That's the best.
okay, I think Mr. Asela answered your question, dear audience. I hope he answered your question and you might be able to implement it into your life. Thank you for answering the question. Again, I need to remind you, if you have any questions in mind, if you have any concerns, if you've got anything, Mr. Asela, to give his advice on, do drop a text. You can PM me here. You can drop it on the chat. You can always unmute and ask away. Do reach out so that this conversation would be more fruitful and more engaging. All right, Mr. Asela, let's carry on.
So I think I've covered this because I just want to wrap it up. I think we discussed most of it as good cyber hygiene practices. It's cyber, not hyber, by the way. I think I made a boo-boo there. So one thing I want to highlight here is backups. We spoke about backups. One thing you guys need to have, especially I know that you do your assignments and there's a lot of data that you have on your laptops or your phones, is the 3-2-1 backup rule, especially on your laptops. And this is important for college students, assignments and so on. So maintain at least 3 copies of your data, 2 copies stored in different locations. So one could be a portable hard disk, one could be a pen drive. The pen drive could be somewhere else, not with you. One in a cloud location. So that could be a Dropbox, Google Cloud, a Microsoft Cloud, anything. But one is in a cloud location. So there's 3 copies. 2 copies in physical form, one with you all the time, one a little away from you, maybe at home, one in your bag all the time, and one on the cloud. Why we do this is because if one backup fails, at least you have 2 backups more. And if you're, for example, having a ransomware attack or something like that, data is compromised, at least you have 3 backups to work with. So this is something you need to remember as the 3-2-1 backup rule. So floor is open for everyone for questions. I didn't want to take much of your time, and I'm looking forward to some of your questions.
Okay, Mr. Asela, first and foremost, on behalf of everyone here today, I must thank you. And I think you're talking about sexting, that is usually considered a very controversial taboo topic in, these sort of settings, and you open-heartedly talking about it. It's truly amazing. And Mr. Rotaract Dinuk had a question, right?
Yeah, thank you, Lehan. Thank you. So, Mr. Asela, I just want to get a quick idea about it. That usually, when we're talking with one of our friend or a colleague regarding, I was experiencing this situation where I talk about shoes that I want to buy. So suddenly, I don't know how, like literally from when I'm surfing on the Instagram, suddenly I'm kept getting some advertisement where these are the things you can buy. So actually, how it's work? Can we prevent it from happening? Because it's really freaking me out sometimes, because I don't know whether they're hearing us.
I think that's a really excellent question, Mr. Asela. I think this relates to where you said a manufactured consent.
Absolutely. You and me both, you and me both. Sometimes literally I'm talking to my daughter or my wife, and 2 minutes later I see an add-on. There's an interesting thing. It may look like voodoo. There has been privacy researchers have made the contention that social media companies are listening to us. By the way, if you check your app permissions, you can see all the social medias have access to your phone, your contacts, your microphone, and your camera. So they can on it remotely anytime they want. But of course, the companies maintain that we are not listening to your conversations. I don't think so too, because Facebook has 1 billion plus people, more than 1 billion people now. So if they're listening to everyone, that's a lot of storage, which I don't think they want. But what they are doing is a practice called fingerprinting. They know the device you use, the mobile phone. They know the laptop you use, and they know that both of those devices are used by the same person. They know who your parents are and the devices they use, because all of you all share the same Wi-Fi sometimes. So, and of course, if they know who you are, they know who your close family is, they know where you live, they know who your friends are. And chances are, if your friend has bought a certain type of shoe, and given the data that it already knows about you, chances are you will be shown that ad. Freakishly enough, like I said, these guys are so good that it looks like they're just breathing down our neck and listening to all the information. But that's how good they are, because there's a lot of computing power that goes behind trying to get these models right. Models, I mean, data models, so that whatever you want at the time you want it is predicted to you to make a decision, especially a purchasing decision. So for example, if you're a basketball player and every 3 months your shoes are going off, and your friend has recently bought, I don't know, a certain type of basketball shoe brand, chances are that particular ad will be shown to you. So yes and no, but of course there was a research done very recently where a guy had kept his phone near a radio and kept it for 4 days in a Spanish speaking radio station, and he noticed that all his ads became Spanish. So I don't know whether that's the social media trying to pick out certain keywords and then understanding that you're in a Spanish speaking background and trying to push those ads to you. But certainly fingerprinting is the main mode they use, because of course, like I said, if they're going to record everyone, it's going to be problematic. But certainly if you have an Alexa or Google Home in your home, those recordings do go back to the parent company and they do listen to those recordings. And there's evidence to prove that they do have those recordings stored for later use. They call it analytics. I think Amazon was exposed on this, although they called it analytics. Literally, you can use it for anything. I hope I did justice to your question, Diluk. So yes and no. But how do we get around it? Well, you can limit your social media use. Or if you're really talking questionable things, you can put your phone on airplane mode. There's a little thing called a Faraday box. If you're really going tinfoil hat, there's a thing called a Faraday cage or a Faraday box. You can put your phone into that and then maybe you can talk to your friends. But the downside is that you won't get any calls and it's like literally on airplane mode there. So if you really want to go there, that's that. But certainly that is where we're at right now. And this is something I touched on with you guys as well, of how much they know about us and how much of our daily life is being very deftly manipulated by these social media companies.
So that's a kind of unfortunate for us at the moment, right? Like we don't have option for that.
Exactly. So one thing I say is if you can take a digital detox, that's fine. So generally what I tell people is, listen, don't go to sleep with your phone if you can. Because see, the time spent on a device is directly proportional to the data they have. So at least 30 minutes before you go to sleep, knock it off. And I know so many people, but Asela sir, I don't have an alarm. Well, buy a blooming alarm. It's $300. It's literally there. It'll never run out. You put a little pen torch battery, it'll never run out. You do that because you want to go to sleep with your device. That's the excuse you use. So try not to do that and try to limit the time. I'm not saying get out of social media because that's a little difficult, but limit the time. Because the less data they have on you, the better. Always look at your cache, try to clear the cache, especially in your machine from time to time, because that really helps the social media companies to create the profile, the engineering part of it. So if you can, take those precautions, you can minimize, not take away, minimize it.
Minimize. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Asela, very much.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Dilip. Thank you for
Dino,
your
for
question.
asking that question. Mr. Asela, we've got one more question before we have to wrap our little session up. The question is, this is a bit of a long question. The question is, Mr. Asela, so it circles back to having your privacy secure on social media. So this is something that one of the audience has asked. The question is, how do you make sure that your data is kept private, especially when you're communicating with someone in an intimate way? Because people take screenshots and everything. So I kind of understand this question. Is there a way for us to make sure that our privacy is maintained without people taking screenshots? Is there a way to make sure that ourselves are secure?
It's a complicated question.
Yes.
On a social media setting, it's a little difficult because, see, the entire premise of social media, as I mentioned, is to keep connecting people. So they're not really big on, preventing screenshotting. I know some companies are doing it. I know Instagram is working on something right now to stop screenshotting. Snapchat worked on something, but there were instances where people showed, for example, if you go on airplane mode and take a screenshot and switch off airplane mode, it doesn't detect it. So some stuff like that. So it's a little difficult because people do have workarounds. In terms of very secure messaging apps, I would say Signal is very secure. Telegram has its, what we tell, for example, journalists or human rights defenders, because these are guys doing very dangerous jobs and sometimes working in very oppressive regimes. For those guys, what we recommend is something like Signal, because it's very difficult to track. It's where your privacy is almost there. They don't store any details with themselves. And certainly, screenshotting, there are certain features that they have that makes it difficult. But you must understand, if there is a communication with party A and party B, you can't have complete obscurity, because obviously there's two parties to that conversation. And if one party decides to betray you, and this is usually what happens, it's not the technology, it's the person. There's very little you can do about it. But certainly from a technology point of view, to ensure that your privacy is there, I would recommend something like Signal or Telegram, because they have more advanced features. You can delete stuff. You can make it. This is actually, if you look at what WhatsApp is copying now, it's basically stuff that Telegram and Signal have been doing for a while. These disappearing messages, the unsend button, all of that has been there with Signal for a long time. So if you're really privacy conscious, something like a Signal is what I would recommend of social media.
Okay. To the person that asked that question, I hope Mr. Asela answered it. I learned a lot about it. So thank you, Mr. Asela, for answering the question, and thank you for asking the question. And with that being said, unfortunately, we have to wrap things up for the day. And before proceeding on to that, Mr. Asela, I just want to personally thank you for joining in with us and enlightening us and talking about some. And with that being said, we are going to rotate back to Rotaract Dino Dias. I would like to humbly invite him to give off the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Lehan. Thank you very much. So on behalf of the Professional Council 22 and 23 of the Rotaract Club of Colombo Regent, I'm honored to take this opportunity to extend our sincere gratitude to Mr. Asela Vaidyalankara for accepting our invitation. Thank you, sir, for sharing your valuable time and your knowledge with us present. So it was indeed a pleasure to have learned a cybersecurity insight from an industry expert like you, and again to know what are the specifically we needed to prevent up to some certain level. Actually really good and really helpful. It will really helpful for us. And special thank goes to team members of the PD Council, Rotractor Ayman, Amir, and Director Professional Development, Rotractor Michael, and this Pillai, President of Rotaract Club of Colombo Region, and the other board members of 4-year for the year of 2023. And thank you for your timeless effort, guys, for making this project encrypted success. I would also like to thank our director Delano Fernando and his team for the creative effort and the utmost time. Thank you, our director Alehan Konagalage, and moderating and comparing for this very event. To everyone present, thank you for your join us. We hope we gained some. We hope you have gained a lot and something valuable today and for your career life with your rest of your life. And thank you and the great evening and enjoy the day. Over to you, Lehan. Thank you very much.
All right. So thank you, Dinuk, for those humbling words. Mr. Asela, from my again, I have to thank you for joining in. I also would like to take this moment to thank everyone and anyone who was a part of the project, who gave their best to make sure that this event was a success. And I also should thank everyone who participated, because without y'all, this event wouldn't have been a success. And thank you for asking questions and making sure it was more engaging and entertaining. And with that being said, guys, I hope that y'all learned something valuable. I hope that y'all learned how to encrypt the very important data of your life to make sure that you are safe on the cyberspace. And with that being said, this is Project Ncrypted, and we are the Rotaract Club of Colombo Regent. Viva la Rotaract.
Right. GG's.